Hey guys, Art 17 here, and we're still in week 4. We're going to talk about assignment number 8, excuse me, and homework, which is drawing your own eyes. Assignment number 8 is, I call it mapping shapes and shades. We're going to take a particular subject and draw it and shade it, including the background. And I will show you some examples of that now. So what we're going to do is take a chair and drape a coat, a hoodie, maybe just a garment or a small towel, or not small towel, a small blanket or a big towel. Something that has maybe not a terry cloth sort of texture, but a cloth like a hoodie or a jacket or a blanket. It could be a sheet too, I guess. The thing about a sheet, it's kind of thin and it doesn't create such tucks and folds and crevices as something more a little thicker. So you want to have maybe the hoodie, the jacket, um, or a blanket that's thicker than not, so that it. But you don't want to cover the whole chair. You want to see part of the bottom of the chair and the side of the chair and the garment going over the chair. Okay. You're going to set yourself up with a single light source. I say that all semester because that's going to create the light and dark sides, the lit up side, the shadow side of everything. This shows you your shape. When you put the lights and darks and the midtones together, you're showing that this tucks in here and rolls over here and tucks in here and rolls over in here. So you have all the folds and all the dark crevices, the deep areas, and the areas that are out catching the light. It's all represented. When you put all those tones on the subject, you're showing where the light source comes, and that light source on the subject is telling you the shape of it, or even the textures. When we perceive it as viewing it, our minds key into that and get the understanding of what this is and what the folds are, and is that round or sharp edges, or is it rough or smooth textures. All that is told to us by the light source hitting it, and when you're drawing something on a two-dimensional plane, you're creating the three-dimension by showing all those tucks and folds in the light and dark areas. It's starting to have a shape now, as opposed to being flat. If you were just drawing this with lines and no shading, it'd be flat, and maybe you wouldn't even notice that there's tucks and folds and crevices to everything, or that this chair stem here, or the leg, are rounded. Because you see the light hitting on this side, and then it gradually changes to a dark shadow area on the other side. Well, that's telling us that it's a rounded surface. And this is a flat surface here with carved into the wood designs. It's all told you by the light and dark and midtones. Really, seriously, that's it. Proportion, of course. You want to get the right proportions on the legs. Chair comes out this way and the legs work a certain way to the ground. I'll show you another image where you show that where the legs are hitting the ground, and they're not all the same length. I mean, they're the same length, but they're not hitting the ground in the same area, depending on how high you're looking at this, what your eye level is. If you're down on the floor looking at it, it's going to look a lot different than standing up looking at it. This is the same thing with the lisps that I was explaining before, and it all is perception from where you are looking from. And it all changes as you walk around the chair or go lower or higher than the chair. It'll all change. You'll just do it as an experiment, you'll see that everything changes as far as perspective goes. So you're telling your viewer again that you're looking at it from a certain angle or certain height by the way you're drawing it in proportion. Okay, so we're noticing the mapping shapes and shades is just basically one thing to the other. So this stem to the back of the chair, to that stem, to where the garment comes in, and then it folds down into a dark, deep area here, and comes back up here, and folds down, and comes back up, folds down, comes back up. All of that is mapping shapes and shades together. So they're all meeting each other. You know, yes, you're drawing something, but you're really recognizing how shades and different shading tones, lights, darks, and midtones all meet and move on or gradually change into one another. There's no sharp line here. There should be no lines in here. If you want to sketch it out with lines and then shade to get rid of the lines, because the lines really aren't drawn on the blanket. It's shading tones that you're representing that are more accurate to what's on the blanket or the hoodie, not lines. Now the chair may have a few lines in it, like these dug out lines, these carving lines, but this should be just where the chair ends in shading tones. Maybe you can put a bold, thicker line there, not like a writing line. I see they've done that there. But more than not, it's all shading. So these shading tones meet the background, which is lighter than most of the subject matter. And then the floor area is darker. Let's look at another one. Okay, so you're looking from above the chair, right? So you see the seat, and it comes out this way. And the legs are the same length, but that doesn't mean that this one goes down to where this one's hitting the floor. Or this one in the back goes down to where this one's hitting the floor. They don't. They hit the floor in perception. It looks like they're above that where this is drawn on the paper. That's above that, higher. Okay, but the floor is flat, right? If you were to get down on the floor and put your head on the floor and look at the chair, all the legs would be straight across. But since you're looking at it at this angle, from standing up or across the room looking at it, maybe sitting in a chair yourself, but it's still, you're looking down at it. That's why these legs here end up hitting the floor perceivedly as you're looking here. They look like they're higher. They're hitting the floor higher. So some students make the mistake of, well, I need to drag that chair leg all the way down here because that's where this one's hitting on it right here. No, it isn't. It's behind here on the floor. It's all perception. Okay, so really just notice what you're looking at and draw it. Measure with your pencil, holding your pencil out at it. How long is that? Well, it's the same length as this one. If you were to put that hitting the floor down here, it'd be a lot longer, and that wouldn't work. That's not accurate. So make sure you do the chair legs correctly. So they are hitting the ground flat, right? The ground is flat. But from where you're looking at, they look like they're hitting in different areas. But the back ones are consistent with each other this way, horizontally. And the front one should be too, unless the chair is twisted like this. Actually, this, I just found a flaw in this drawing. This one should be a little longer because the chair is twisted. So this one's hitting here, this one's hitting a little below that one because you twisted the chair. So this leg actually should be coming down about right there. I just found that. Okay. That's a student drawing, by the way. But the jacket and the overall, that's something you might not even notice. And also these shading marks right here are not accurate. These should be connected to the chair. So I'm showing some flaws in this one, so you won't do that. You know, if this is a cast shadow, they go up to the top of the chair where the seat is, right? So there would be a shadow all in here. Actually, these legs would go up higher and this seat would be a little over. But just notice what you're looking at. If you have a cast shadow on the ground, then draw it in as you see it, and it should turn out fine, okay? I think the jacket is the really well done part, and the wood is done well. Now you have a shadow, you have a shading in the back, which is kind of smudged in. It's not perfectly one shade. It's kind of going back between a few different shades, and that works well. The ground's kind of white, but that works with a lot of this cast shadow. So you don't want the background and the ground area, the floor area, to be exactly the same tone because it's going to get lost within itself. It'll just look like an abyss. Okay, I think this one's a pretty strong one because it has a lot of light and contrast and a really nice cast shadow on the wall back here. Wooden chairs work really well for this because there's slats in them. And they have, it's not just one covered whole chair. So if you have a wooden chair, use one because this is going to look really good. It's going to look more artistic, I think, than something else. But work with what you have. And the garment has some lines in it, but it has a lot of shading too. So it's very, I call it drawerly, like they say painterly when you're using paint. And you see a lot of the work of the paint actually, how it was applied. And it has a lot of character. And this has a lot of character in that sense as well. But you have the background is a little lighter than the ground area, but it all works with the subject because the subject's a little lighter than the background. So it's either one or the other. The background floor should be lighter than your subject or darker than your subject, not the same tone. Because if it's the same tone, it's going to get lost with itself. Okay? But there's nice cast shadows from the garment on the chair here. Then you have the lit up part of the chair, has a little tone in it. And then you have that nice cast shadow back there too. That's really sweet. So I know it's a small drawing. This one's a pretty good one too. And this is really accurate with the cast shadow connecting to the other shadow on the where the seat meets and everything on the ground. I think because there's so much cast shadow so quickly here that the whole background being kind of smudged the same tone worked because it looks like the wall may start right about here and go up. But all this shadowing on the legs, really nice. And then you have highlights over here, highlights of where the light is hitting and shining off the shiny part of the chair there. But underneath, lighter, darker, lighter, darker, lighter, darker. This is all telling you that these are square legs, squared off legs that are posts. They're long, but they're square around. They're not rounded. And all the light source you're showing in your different tones is showing you all that. Then the garment is mapped really well with a lot of contrast and midtones. Very dark areas, very light areas, and then the midtone areas. All swirling around wherever this was, and dips and folds, and right here, here, crevices, dark areas, very dark areas in here. This all works to give you a lot of contrast and a lot of shape. You have the very lightest areas right up here, here, and then midtones, and then all the dark areas. So between all three of those, and they gradually change into one another as well. Here, like through here. Here they sort of suddenly change. But between all of that, you're getting very good shape, very good contrast, a very rich drawing. It has a lot of feeling to it. Okay, so that was my 3 drawings I was going to show you. Set up your situation your still life of a chair, maybe twist it slightly. It should be more interesting than not maybe not straight on, but or a whole profile perfectly, kind of twisted so you see the seat in the back and maybe all the legs, and then put your garment on there in a certain way that it drapes over, showing part of the chair, but drapes over and has a lot of dips and folds. Don't make it so it's very flat, because that's not going to be getting all the nice dips and folds and crevices that you really want. So if you might have to put it on there and kind of pull things out to make the dips and crevices happen. All right? Okay. Let's look at the homework, which was drawing your own eyes. Excuse me. So drawing your own eyes, I'm going to show an eye here, but what I really want you to do is draw both eyes. Don't draw one eye. I'm just going to show you the one eye because it's a really good drawing of an eye. Okay, so I have a couple males here, and I'll show you another female. I think this is a female. This is actual drawing, so it's very intricate, I know, but what I want you to notice about the eye is it's not a complete oval shape. It comes to a point here and comes to a kind of a point in the back on the other side, in each corner. This side has a little bit of skin area here that's attaching the eye to the other part of your head. And there can be some very light highlights where it's wet in there, catching the light. This is a nice highlight right here, catching the light. It shows, you're showing that the eye is wet, it's moist. So also the reflection from light source in the room will be on the eye somewhere. So notice that, and notice where it is and put it in. You're going to actually erase out tone if you already did the iris color, the graphite for the iris color. Then you're going to erase that out. And maybe it does have reflections of your eyelashes on it or something. That's what that is. But definitely, if you put that in, it's going to look rounded and very, very moist. Also, the white area is not totally white. It gets a little darker in shade on the corners because it's rounded and it's not catching the light as well over there. And that's going to show that the eyeball is round. It's going to help it look round. If you do the whole thing white, totally white as paper, it won't look round. It'll look flat. So you really want to come up here maybe with a little shadow where the top eyelid is showing over, or in the corners here, and gradually change your tone into the lighter area. Not suddenly, very gradually, very smoothly. Now, you notice the iris is the colored part, has maybe a lot of different muscle structure in here that is actually where your pupil contracts with that muscle. Well, it could be looking like this a lot more than not. If you have really, really dark eyes, you might not see that as much. I understand that. Or I think everybody does have them. If you really look, there'll be imperfections, or they're perfections, but they look like imperfections in the color structure. There's different colors going back and forth that are going to be represented in light and dark tones and midtones. Lighter, midtone, darker, back and forth. Of course, the pupil is totally dark, but it isn't really too small, like a really tiny pin either. It's about this size is fairly accurate. I'll show you the other eyes when I'm showing two eyes, and you'll see it's not really a pin or huge like an anime eye. Okay, big, huge irises, like their eyes are dilated. That's not natural, and it's not accurate. So also notice, okay, you got the eye shape. It's kind of almond shaped in a way, but really notice how this dips down, comes to a point over here, then comes up, and dips down into this area where you have this little muscle structure here. Then notice that more than not, in your eyes, or anybody's eyes, unless you're like, have your eyes wide open like you're scared or totally surprised, if you're relaxed eyes, the top lid covers the iris slightly at the top. You see that? It's covering part of the top of it. The bottom kind of meets the eyelid, the bottom eyelid. Or maybe it's slightly covered, but not by much. The top is more. So I want you to notice that as well. Then you have your eyelashes coming out. They're not all perfect, but unless you have, fake eyelashes on or something, and they're totally perfectly spaced, fine, okay. But I want to see a picture of that. Take a picture of your own eyes, right? Take a photo of your own eyes, fairly close up so that you're not drawing little dinky eyes, and then draw both eyes. Also, you have the brow and in the eye socket, a deep crevice right here that's going to be darker. And then you have the eyelid that's kind of lighter there that meets into a darker area where the lashes are. So, and just notice all of this. It's all represented in dark and light and midtones. Anything I'm talking about, it's all represented that way. Okay, so this is, I believe, male eyes. Okay, so again, top of the iris is covered by the top lid more than the bottom. Okay, there's a length of an eye. So from this corner to this corner, there's that kind of length in between the eyes. Okay, and if you really want to show the side of the head, there's almost another eye level or eye length to the side of the head. It's out here, okay? So you don't have to show the side of the head. The eyes and the bridge of the nose is fine. You don't have to show all the nose, but it's okay if you do. It's a good practice. Okay, right on the side of the nose here, this is not a line. This is shading that goes from maybe a mid-tone to a darker tone to a mid-tone into a lighter tone and then back. Okay, these are not lines. Even here, these are not lines. This is just a thin shading line. And then you have a dark area here. Maybe you have a slight sort of line here with a reflection, but all this is very much shaded. It gradually goes from lighter to midtones to darker to midtones to lighter. All around this nose, showing its shape. You got a round sort of nostrils on the side. Then you've got a tip of the nose here. Typically it's going to catch more light on the tip. And then all this is away from the light, so it's a little darker in tones. But there's no lines. And you have your eyebrows. It could be a lot of different lines for the hairs, or you could just kind of shade them in and then add a few lines here and there over the shading. Okay, there's the reflection mark. You see it? And the sides of the eyes, the white is got a little bit of shading in the sides, the corners, and maybe even over the iris is a little darker right there because of the top lid. These are really intense eyes, kind of a scratchy way of shading. It's sort of making more of a texture of scratchy skin, in my opinion. I would smooth that out, but there's still a strong drawing, okay? And these are shading lines that meet up with each other. It's not like a line and a line. I don't prefer this way of shading all that well. I think it's not accurate to smooth skin tone, but I'm just showing you again that the top of the iris is covered more than the bottom. You've got some shading in the corners of the eyes and along the top a little bit where the eyelid covers the eye. You got your reflection marks that could go over the pupil and the iris. depending on where that reflection mark from light source is. It could go over both, and it looks good that way because then it's not like something just on the iris or on the pupil. It looks like it's over both. And when you do that, it shows the roundness of the eye. Okay, I'm going to show you one more eye, pair of eyes, female eyes. There's several light sources in here. So she's got 3 different light sources reflected on the eye. See, you look at your photo and see how much there is. Okay, how much there is. There's not a lot of shading on the side of the nose because I think the light is coming straight on the face. It's harder to get that shading. I think these are fake eyelashes, but I don't hold me on that. It might be that this person really has eyelashes this big. I don't know. If your eyelashes are that big, go ahead and draw them. That's fine. But be accurate to what you're looking at and what's natural, okay? But sometimes the eyelashes cross over each other, or they're more bunched up in places than other places. And that looks very natural. And like this one's not perfect here, blah, blah, blah. And they're somewhere longer than others. So you want to put all that in. Maybe it gets so intense right here that it's just shading a darker area here and then coming out with the eyelashes. But definitely the top lid meets that brow. There's a darker area right in here before the brow starts. So don't just go a one tone from the tip of the eyelid where it meets the iris and all the way up here to your brow. Don't make that one tone because you have this eyelid tucked in there into the eye socket back in here before the brow kind of curves over in that rounded area to the top when you have your eyebrows. Okay, so I think that's a lot of input for now. Look at the highlight under here where it's catching the little wet part on the lid. And you just erase that out or leave it without any toning, any graphite. You can get these eraser pencils. So there's a way to eject the eraser tip and it comes out, but you can get really thin eraser lines from those eraser pencils. You might want to go look for one of those, or just take some scissors and cut your eraser tip so that it has a real sharp edge, and then you can use that. Okay, so I think that's good for now. Any questions, let me know. That's going to be for both assignments. The chair with the coat over it or blanket. Make sure the folds are there, so you have a lot of dips and folds, a lot of contrast I want to see. Shade the background. Shade the background. So the wall or whatever, the room, you don't have to get into a lot of detail. Just put some shading back there, maybe alluding to other things if it's not the wall. But you don't have to draw what's in the background. Just shade in little parts of it so that it's not white as paper. The white as paper is going to be very distracting to all the other the highlights. If you shade the background and the floor and get rid of that white, all your highlights in your subject are going to stand out now. They all stand out because you shaded the background. It's not white, so when you have very light areas here, that stands out. If this was all white back in here, it wouldn't stand out as well. So that's the big point. It brings your subject matter off the page and toward you in a three-dimensional appearance. All right, I think that's a lot of input for you today, and we'll talk with you next week. That's it for this week. If you haven't sent stuff from the first couple of weeks, you should get that to me now. And otherwise, I've seen a lot of your work. I'll respond today to the rest of your work a little later. Thank you.